This podcast contains content that may be disturbing to some audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi. Hi.
It's so good to see you. How are you?
It's good. I'm so good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
You're feeling better?
Oh my God, so much better. It was like 3.5 weeks where I was like struggling. I feel like I disappeared from the world for a little bit. Like I had to go quiet on social media. Everyone's like, "Are you okay? Where'd you go?" I'm like, "I'm just trying to stay alive."
Oh,
but yeah, I'm better.
Season. It sucks.
I
Sorry.
was just that sick. Yeah. Well, there's that there's COVID, obviously, but then there's the COVID, not COVID. And then there's some mystery combination of all of the above. And it's
That's
like,
what I
why am I
had.
coughing? I don't know.
Yeah, the mystery thing is not fun. It was not fun. Don't recommend.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Melissa. It's nice to meet you.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Melissa. I was too excited.
I know
jumped.
Carly. You're good.
I jumped.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I've known Shannon and I have known each other on Instagram for quite some time. We go back, 2021?
Probably. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I think I slid into your DMs because I was like, this chick seems cool. I kind of want to be her friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was always so excited watching your work and your podcast, The Tarot Diagnosis, because your tarot practice mirrors what I do so well, but you are an actual psychologist.
Well, psychotherapist. I know. They all sound the same. Everyone gets them confused. They're like, which one is it?
Well, what's the difference for our viewers who may not know?
So a psychiatrist can prescribe medication. So they're actual medical doctors. Psychologists are PhD level. So they can do therapy, but they usually do like assessment-based stuff. And then psychotherapists are typically master's level clinicians. And so we're kind of like in the trenches providing psychotherapy, doing direct client work, every day. We can do assessments as well, but we're kind of like, we're really in it, getting into the nitty gritty, like getting into people's brains, trying to figure out what's going on. So, yeah.
And you trained at Johns Hopkins, correct?
I did. Yeah.
That's
I feel
awesome.
really lucky. It was an incredible program, fantastic professors, great cohort. It was a great experience.
Shannon actually gave me, when I realized that I was unwell, I reached out to her, not as a doctor because we were friends, but I was like, I think I need professional help. And she was very kind and sent me a whole host of resources that led me to eventually getting my diagnosis. So talk to your friends, people.
I'm glad I could help. Like, I'm glad that you trusted me enough to talk to me about what was going on. And it's been like, I think it's amazing, one, that you've been sharing your experience, and it's been incredible to watch your transformation too, as you talk about what PTSD is like and how it manifests in your life, and also how you've been able to take your experience and just channel it into this wildly creative life that you have. So I appreciate that as someone who is a consumer of your content.
Thank you. Yeah,
I appreciate it too. It makes, when people are a little bit more vulnerable, it makes you more approachable. And and I appreciate the fact that you, Shannon, you share your expertise with us, because everybody can use a good therapist, no matter what you're going through.
Right. I appreciate that. That was one of the reasons I started the podcast, The Tarot Diagnosis too, is I wanted to make sure that there was, well, one, I wanted to merge tarot and therapy, but I wanted to make sure that there was accessible content for folks who maybe couldn't go to therapy or weren't ready, but at least wanted to have access to something that was talking about things that they were experiencing, or giving, tips, or at least some sense of comfort for what was going on in their life.
Yeah, tarot is such an amazing tool for mental health and for working through your subconscious in general. So it's really, really helpful to see these carefully cultivated exercises and these prompts so that you can, because I mean, I've been in both positions. I've been in therapy and I've been in spots where I can't afford to go to therapy. So it's like, it's that balance and having access to these tools to allow you to continue to heal on your own if and when you need to. And you also have a group, correct? The Tarot Symposium.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have a membership community, which, oh my God, it's one of my favorite things. The people in that community are just like, I tell them all the time, like, I feel so lucky to have this group of people who are so kind and compassionate and curious. And we just have so much fun. It's just kind of like the content that you hear on the podcast or see on Instagram times like 100. And, you know, we get together, we have like 4 different live events each month, and we get together and we talk and we reflect, and it's a wonderful community. I feel really grateful to be around the people that I get to be around.
What got you started in tarot, and why did you decide to start using it in your practice?
So tarot's kind of always been around. I was the like goth witchy kid growing up. So I had the white contacts. Yeah. I figured I was in good company.
You are.
And there was, so in high school, after school, I would go do homework at this little cafe, and it was a cafe plus a little like metaphysical shop. It was all in one. And so that was one of the places I would hang around. And I think it was the first place I probably bought a tarot deck. So I always had one around. I never used it regularly until probably like maybe 5-ish years ago. It was something that I only used maybe 2 or 3 times a year, like birthday, New Year's. And then like if there was a big event coming up, it was one of those things. And then, you know, something happened and I was feeling kind of lost creatively. And I just always had these decks around, and I was like, maybe this is what's missing. So I was just kind of drawn to it. It was like, hey, you're feeling kind of lost right now. And this is what you need. And ever since then, it's been, I feel like, a guiding force in my life. So, but yeah, it's always been something that's been around.
Could I just ask, like, how did you pick your first tarot deck? Because when I got my first tarot deck, I was like, I don't know, like I want one, but I don't know how to pick it out. And I remember the lady saying, just pick what draws you in. Like, what feels good to you.
Yeah, it was. So there was always like this draw to get the original like Rider-Waite-Smith. Like you have to have the traditional deck because that's like the OG, that's your go-to. But aside from that deck, I think if we're going to like speak about like what draws you to maybe a non-traditional deck or how I chose, it was the artwork. Like what do I feel drawn to? What feels comfortable, what feels cozy, because I think I was very intimidated by the traditional Rider-Waite deck for a long time. It wasn't until I got the Tarot Vintage deck, which is just more of a comforting version of the Rider-Waite, that I really dove into or embraced using Rider-Waite imagery. So yeah, I think it was more of just what do I feel like connected to, what feels like me that I would want to look at, or what images like make me or bring up something for me personally. Because I think that's another reason why I use tarot. Like, what do the images bring up for me? How do they correlate to memories that I have or experiences that I've had? So yeah, it was more of just what feels right.
And this is a question for you and Carly both. How do you decide which deck to use in which situation?
That's a good question, Carly. What is that like for you, Carly? What do you do?
I like to say that I wait for them to tell me, but I'll literally like look at my decks and I wait for one of them to catch my attention. But there are some decks that I avoid if I'm feeling sorry for myself or if I'm having like a rough day. I automatically know that there are some decks that will not tolerate my bullshit, and I will not even look at them on days like that. But yeah, I just kind of wait for one to catch my eye, and it's the same if I'm doing a reading for someone else. I look over them and wait to see what calls to me.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar. Mine might be more mood based. Like it really depends on my mood. If I'm feeling kind of upbeat and it's funny because this also informs the reading, I'll reach for something like The Wandering Star, which is very bright and colorful, or Modern Witch, also bright and colorful, modern. If I'm feeling really introspective, then I usually gravitate towards my tarot vintage deck, which is the traditional Rider-Waite imagery, or like shadow work stuff would be Tarot of the Abyss, because it's all black and white. It's very complex and layered, and there's some dark elements. So yeah, it really depends on my mood and what I'm wanting to achieve that day or that hour.
Do you both incorporate Oracle as well, or do you pretty much just do tarot?
I've been wanting to use Oracle more. I'm curious, Carly, what your experience is with that. I know a lot of people in the symposium use both pretty regularly. We had a great discussion recently about how to start incorporating Oracle, and folks have been using it as a clarifier card. So if they're doing a reading and something doesn't quite click, instead of pulling another tarot card, which could then maybe complicate things further for the reading, they will pull an Oracle card. And I thought that was brilliant. It seems a little bit more inviting. Sure. Yeah. And it seems like that would be more of a clarifier card than another tarot card. So that's what I'm going to try to start using it for moving forward.
I like that.
I own a ton of Oracle decks. I actually think I own more Oracle decks than I do tarot.
No way.
I love the artwork in them. Like this one right here is really sweet. I used this on a reading yesterday. It's the spirit, spirit animal oracle. It's really pretty. It's really so pretty. Soft. I think that they have a slightly different energy than tarot. So sometimes if you need a gentler approach, it'll give you the same messages, just like softer. So, but I'll do readings with tarot and oracle combined. Sometimes I only do oracle cards. It really kind of just depends on the day. But using it for clarifiers is also really smart. Or I'll start with an oracle card and like just pull one oracle card. And then I turn to my tarot deck and I'll say, okay, expand. Like what else do I need to know about this? And it just kind of continues the conversation between the different divination systems. So it's cool.
I like that reverse order, starting with Oracle and then transitioning to tarot. I might steal that. I'm going to try that later.
Yeah. Especially if you're just getting to know Oracle. Yeah. If you're just getting to know Oracle decks, there's no wrong way to do it, either one. But sometimes it's nice because at the beginning of the reading, I am a little bit more focused. And so I'll really sit with the meeting. I'll kind of journal what it means for me. And then I go to tarot because I feel like I know tarot like the back of my hand. And sometimes I'm like, ugh, I don't want to hear it. Seven of Swords, get out of my face.
Right. Seriously. Yeah.
So when it starts with an oracle card and I'm like, okay, because I almost have to read the guidebook for those ones because there's no set meaning like tarot, like a tarot system. So unless it's a deck I know super well, I have to take the time to like focus and really dissect what it means for me. And then I move into the tarot cards and let them expand. But by that point, I am usually less sassy with it if it's a card or a message that I'm like disagreeable towards because I already have it in the gentler format.
And for those listeners that we have who aren't quite sure what the difference between tarot and oracle are, could you explain that for us, Shannon?
Carly might be better at this.
But either one of you, I guess.
But so tarot is a set of specifically 78 cards that goes back. It's debatable. Some people have different views of where it originally originated, whereas and they have very set meanings, very specific images. But of course, there's modern interpretations where oracle could be any number of it could be any number, 10 cards to 120 cards or whatever. And I mean, the options are endless. You could make an oracle deck for there's just for anything. You could have an oracle deck based on bees that are just like affirmations, or an oracle deck on like astrology or the moon phases. That's what I think. But Carly might be better at describing the difference than I am.
No, that's exactly it. Tarot is a set system. There's a couple decks that I have that they've changed a couple of the names or they've added an extra
Right.
card, but those are pretty rare. An oracle deck is whatever the creator wants it to be. So that's why the guidebooks are so important for
Yeah.
for oracle decks, because you really don't know unless you've memorized that deck. Yeah. So, but I did want to ask, do you have more questions about the deck? Sorry, Melissa.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, I wanted to kind of shift the conversation over to something that you mentioned before, which is shadow work.
Yeah.
That is the foundation of my practice as well. But I was wondering if you could give our listeners a description of what shadow work is.
Yeah. So, I mean, at its core, shadow work is everything that we, maybe don't want to see, or don't want to acknowledge about ourselves. Our shadows are aspects of ourselves that have been repressed, that we've denied, and they typically form in childhood. They can continue to form throughout the developmental phases of our life, but the majority, the kind of foundation of our shadows tend to form when we are having, these really foundational experiences. And they typically develop because something happened to us, and maybe we were trying to appease these, like our parents or authority figures, and we learned that something that we did or expressed or thought or felt was somehow not right, inappropriate, wrong, or quote unquote bad. And then that then becomes a shadow component of us. However, I feel like there's this misconception that our shadow parts or our shadow self is maybe this evil, dark, psychopathic part that we need to confront in order to be self-actualized. And I think that's probably maybe the sexy allure of shadow work. But the reality is our shadows can also be lighter parts of ourselves that we have still repressed or denied. So I think that that's an important component to include when we're talking about shadow work. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I have these really horrible thoughts or ways that I want to respond to somebody, and it makes me a terrible person because I just want to like say the most grotesque things to this person who wronged me. And so that's my shadow self. But it's also like parts of us that are light. Like maybe we were a really curious child and asked a lot of questions, and that was a part of us that was not compassionately cultivated by our parents. And so we repress that or deny that. And now maybe we judge people who are curious and ask a lot of questions. So yeah, that's my shadow work explanation.
No, I love that. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that it's not like an evil, dark thing, because as my social media presence has kind of like shifted and I've been meeting people in different corners of the world, one of the main pieces of feedback that I keep getting is that shadow work sounds really scary. And I'm like, I forgot that not everybody knows what
Maybe
this
depending
is.
on your background, it can be scary.
Maybe depending on your background. Yeah. And so I started telling people that I said it sounds scary, but it's more like extreme self-love, because you're loving all of the parts of you and not just what other people have deemed acceptable. And the lighter aspects are true too, like the curious child, or even if you're judgmental about an adult who asks too many questions, there's also an aspect where you could feel jealous and wonder, like, why am I feeling jealous about this person? And when you practice shadow work and you get to the root of the problem, your jealousy is because you want to ask questions too, but you were told that makes you undesirable. So learning to show yourself that love and respect heals that part of you that was wounded.
You just said that so beautifully.
You did.
And
you did.
Yeah, the way you described like the jealousy, for example. So that's a perfect example of Carl Jung's kind of the father of shadow work. He's who we think of when we think of shadow work. He created, when we think about the different archetypes of the self, the shadow self, he has a quote, and I always butcher the quote, but it's something along the lines of what we what irritates us about others is what we don't like about ourselves. And that's not verbatim, but it's something along those lines.
That's very true, though.
Yeah, and it's exactly what Carly just described. This, oh, I'm jealous that this person has the opportunity or is giving themselves permission to be curious and ask questions because I was taught that that's a bad quality or that makes me, not fun or enjoyable to be around. So I have these questions, but I feel like I'm not allowed to access that part of myself. So, yeah.
You did a recent episode on the mother wound through the lens, generational trauma. And I loved that episode.
Oh, thanks.
Can you talk to us about how how using tarot helped you kind of work through that?
Yeah. And it's so funny because while I was doing that episode, that was such an interesting episode.
It was. It was a great episode.
Thank you. Because it's a lot of inner child work if you think about it. And I hadn't intended to think about it through the lens of the inner child, but also shadow work is inherently inner child work if you really think about it. And when I was thinking about the mother wound, I was just like sitting here contemplating on what I wanted to say, and all the queens just like flashed in front of me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, duh. All the queens, reverse and upright, represent the different types of relationships you could have with your mother. And as I was reflecting on the shadow components of the reverse queens, I was thinking about the interactions that someone who was a child and had that reverse queen mother might have experienced, and then what that might have done for their self-narrative or the story that they created about themselves. And it was really fascinating to think about, I think specifically about like the reverse Queen of Cups, because that's kind of my mother wound. I had to be why I'm a therapist. I had to be my mother's therapist growing up. And it's funny, in grad school, they made us write a paper on the unhealthy reasons we wanted to be a therapist. And it was, I'm supposed to fix everybody. That was the role I had to play.
Oh, shoot.
I know, that was a fun paper to write. So the reverse Queen of Cups, for example, that mother wound relates to the shadow component of my feelings are not valuable or they're a burden. So I should not share how I'm feeling at any given moment with the people around me, because that's not what I'm supposed to do. My role is I'm supposed to be there for others, and my emotions will be too much for them, and I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. So eventually, this is where the shadow component comes in. If you find yourself in a position where, maybe that's what you experience, if you haven't done the work, you might be in platonic relationships or romantic relationships where you start to build resentment because you're everything to this friend, you're everything to your partner. They can come to you and share everything, that they need to, but you don't feel like that's reciprocated. And often we will project. Another huge component of shadow work is projection. So we will then project onto our friend or project onto our partner this anger, this frustration of, you don't care about me, you don't think about me, or, you don't do this or you don't do that. But really it's us. We're not allowing ourselves to share how we feel or what's going on with us emotionally because we were taught that wasn't okay, that wasn't acceptable.
That sounds kind of familiar.
Oh no.
It's the mama trauma.
Mama trauma.
I'm not trying to say that, my mom was the most fantastic mom ever, but we were kind of taught to keep our emotions inside. Don't let them. Don't let them
Absolutely.
So,
Well, you smile, and you act nice, and everything will eventually be fine. Which is it's actually funny. Smile and be happy. Yeah, it's a thing that you will see me fall back on time and time again. And I know exactly why I do it. But if I am stressed or if I'm uncomfortable or any slightly negative emotion, I will immediately smile and laugh to to cover the moment. And then later I'm like, all right, I gotta work on that and just stop and chill. But yeah, it's a nervous habit. But before I practiced shadow work, I never knew that. And that is one of the reasons that it's so beneficial. But I did want to ask, for our listeners who have not heard that episode. And I agree. It is a fantastic episode. You should go back and listen to it. But can you give us maybe just like a brief exercise that if somebody is listening to this and they're curious about shadow work and they know that they have a lot of mama trauma, can you think of anything that they could do just quickly on their own to practice like dipping their toes in the water with the mother wound?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I created a spread for this episode that's on my Instagram account that folks can go check out. And so this is how tarot or oracle can be so beneficial in moments like this, especially with shadow work, because you have to remember shadow work and our shadow components are the aspects of us that we keep hidden. So they're often not easily accessible, but when we pull a card, then it's like, oh, stuff comes up for us. So you might want to ask, what is something that I needed from my mother that I didn't receive growing up? And you might immediately have a response to that. If you don't, pull a card, see what comes up, or, what memories or feelings or experiences that you have just looking at the image. And then you can pull another card for how has that influenced my personal narrative as an adult and reflect on that. And then you could pull another card to explore, well, what do I do with this information? Or how can I work on integrating, this part of my shadow into who I am now so that I can feel more whole.
I love that.
Yeah.
I like that you
too.
put those different spreads on your Instagram also. And tell us about your book, because you have a book full of over 200 different spreads.
Yeah. So this is something I had been wanting to do for so long because, these spreads have been created for several years now. And people just kept asking me, when are you going to put them all together? I was like, okay, I finally need to do this. It's not all of them, but it's kind of like a compilation of my favorites. So there's 152 card prompts. So 2 card prompts are super easy. You don't have to sit and do a robust spread. You can just pull 2 cards, and they're interesting prompts, not your typical, 2 card prompts that you would think of like problem solution. They're prompts that really make you think outside the box. So they might be, prompts like, I feel blank when blank, or, my curiosity means blank. So you'd pull a card for curiosity and then what it means. And then there's an additional 50 plus more robust spreads. So these are 3, 4, 5, 6 card spreads. And yeah, it was really fun to finally put together and also just see the progression of my work over the last couple of years, which was really nice because things get lost on Instagram. You have things in your feed and on your grid, and you're like, oh, I made this spread. Let me scroll through and find it. And you're just continuing to scroll.
Where is it?
Yeah. So it was nice to have everything, in a book, and it was really well received. And I'm so glad folks have enjoyed it. It's been really cool seeing, people put their tarot cards on the 2 card spreads and then journal, what came up for them. So yeah, it's called Tarot and Self-Discovery. You can buy the hard copy on Amazon, or there's a digital PDF version on the website, thetarotdiagnosis.com. So accessible for everybody.
And for someone like me who is not super familiar with tarot or, the layouts and spreads and such, it's helpful for me to be like, okay, this is what I'm asking. This is what I need. What spread would work the best and what questions should I ask? But it's also helpful, I think, for people who are really into tarot and know a lot, because it gives you kind of a place to start, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the way I design my prompts and spreads are, you don't even need tarot. They're essentially journal prompts. You could sit and just reflect on these. And there's a few people in the community who because there's a daily prompt every day in the symposium, and they don't pull a card first. They journal, just kind of free associate to what comes up for them for that prompt. And then they'll pull a card and add on to the reflection based on the card. So yeah, even if you're not super familiar with tarot, the prompts and the spreads in the book, or even just on Instagram, you can use just for self-reflection and self-discovery.
I actually found that book I have the PDF version, but I loved it so much that I'm buying a physical copy. But you're welcome. Yeah, no, but I found it extra helpful because I do know tarot very well, obviously that's tarot is the center of my practice, but a lot of the trauma that I experienced, I was practicing tarot during the time and everything got kind of warped in my mind. So there was a time that I had to step away
Yep.
and step back from the cards because I couldn't distinguish the messages from the cards. To me, stopped being about how I could grow and started feeling like the tower felt more like, guess what? Another terrible thing's about to happen to you, And I recognized it when it was happening. So I stepped aside and then I started carefully rebuilding my relationship with tarot. So for someone like me, I do know the cards very well, but I had so much trauma that affected my practice. Having these very simple prompts, simple and well thought out prompts, has made a big difference for me in being able to get back to my practice on my own. Because it's not a lot of it's not on Instagram these days, and that's for a reason. It's because I'm still
Right.
I'm working on it. But so even for the seasoned tarot practitioners out there, there is so much benefit to using this book in particular or other spreads just to give you an area to focus on. Yeah.
I think I just want to say, I think it's wonderful that you were able to identify that you needed to take a step back. I think that's a huge component of any sort of either spiritual or self-growth journey, is being able to identify when is this not as beneficial as it was. And sometimes just taking it in general is helpful. It's almost like a palate cleanser. Like I just cleanse my brain for a second.
Yeah, exactly. It was something that I recognized that it's so important to me that I didn't want it to be. I don't want to say tainted, but I say that anyways. But I didn't want it to be tainted by my trauma. So making the conscious choice to kind of step back, pull it away from social media so that it's mine again, and then sharing if and when I'm ready.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You had another recent episode where you talked to therapist Cami Osman, who left her religion and found tarot, which is something that Carly and I can relate to.
Yeah.
And she talked about how her religion kind of taught her that tarot and Ouija boards and all that stuff is so evil. And you need to stay away from it. But why do religions teach that? I mean, why do you think so many? Why do you think
I'm like, what am I allowed to say?
No, you're allowed to say whatever you want.
You're allowed to say everything.
Carly's like, I'm so here for the tea right now.
Go for it.
I mean, I think it's control. Like if you gosh, I'm probably going to piss some people off, but I think organized religion is a lot about control. And if you're choosing to participate in this practice that, the church doesn't have control over, or it's going to, so I've always called tarot a thought exercise. I understand that it's rooted in divination. I view it as a thought exercise. And I think there's two components here. So one, if the organized religion is believing that this is divination and it is of the devil and it is satanic, of course, they're not going to want you to use it because they feel like you're conjuring evil spirits. I think the second component in part is you might be thinking for yourself and have insights and thoughts that don't align with what they want you to think. Yeah, right. Exactly. So you've got these two really big deal components here where they don't have control over what's happening. You're either conjuring evil spirits or thinking for yourself, and they don't want either of that.
Yeah.
Well, and I've even in the paranormal world, I don't know how many times I've been criticized for, I'm sure. A Ouija board, it's the intention you put into it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
And I have been, no. It's if you are not careful and you don't close up the portal or whatever.
Close out the session correctly. No, it's fear-based thinking that gets you to those places. And with the church, it absolutely is. It's control. It's if they can keep you from thinking for yourself, then you're going to keep going along with whatever it does. And tarot shows you a different way to view the world and to view yourself. And with the Ouija board, it's kind of the same thing. And as we know from my previous Ed Warren rant, which I won't repeat. I could, but I won't, because that doesn't fit in today's discussion. But no, it's fear. It's fear-based. We have been taught to fear this thing because we've been told that it's evil, and not enough people have stopped to ask why we're afraid of this thing. We're afraid of this thing because a book and a movie and then a few people latched on to that narrative and taught us that it's evil. And it takes more people like the conversations like this to say, is it actually though? Or were you just conditioned to believe that and nobody taught you to question that belief?
And what does fear invite? Fear invites all of that in. So if you're automatically scared of it, then that's the energy you're going to invite in, right?
Yeah. You get
absolutely.
What you expect.
And it's interesting. Like, I feel like this could also be, we could integrate this into like the whole concept of shadow work too. Because if you grew up in that environment, right? Like if you grew up seeing that, now it's like, oh, here's this person, like, again, going back to the curiosity, or like if you, because I feel like there's, you know, things that are ingrained in us and, you know, behaviors learned, but there's also just parts of our personality and temperament that, you know, are there at birth. And if we're someone who's naturally curious about the occult or witchy stuff or tarot or the paranormal, but we've been told that that is wrong or bad or not acceptable, then that's the narrative that we subscribe to. And then we project that, we further the narrative, project it onto other people who are engaging in it, even though we desperately want to engage in it as well. So yeah, having spaces where folks are allowed to be curious about their past and explore, you know, what does or does not fit still, I think is important. And I hope that everybody gets the opportunity to really look at themselves and say, what do I want to keep that I learned? And what do I want to discard that is no longer useful for me?
Hey, you guys heard that from a psychotherapist. Like, she knows what she's talking about. So.
Sometimes.
It's not
it's not just us ranting. No, I was just gonna say, I love that we kind of tied this back into shadow work too, because that is at its core what shadow work is about. It is about examining those long held beliefs and kind of questioning why you have them and how you could grow by taking a moment to say, why am I so afraid of this thing? Or it's like, Melissa, like when I first started having experiences with ghosts and I'd be like, this is terrifying. I'm so scared. And
because
then I would stop.
To fear it. Yeah.
Because we were taught to fear it. And I stopped and I pulled out my cards and said, what is happening here? And was able to reframe it. But if you don't have an example of how to do that, then it's like, well, you're stuck in that fear-based mindset.
Right. Which, going back to the church, they want to make sure that you don't have access to question that, you know, or any sort of, you know, rigid, you know, either religion or community that you're a part of. You know, they want to keep a tight grip so that you can't be curious, unfortunately.
If religion really helps you to be happy and to do the things that you love to do, then by all means, like, be a part of it. But
absolutely,
I think for a lot of people, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, it just, it taints.
I'll say it.
Like, if I ask questions, go ahead, Carly. If I ask questions, then
I was going to say, let me clear my throat and say this is my own personal opinion. You don't have to agree with me. Religion is a damaging institution. Yeah. Religion has caused more damage, more wars, more hate than it does love, because you're not conditioned to believe in it. In the good parts of religion, you are instilled with fear and hatred out of fear guilt. That you're going to go to hell, and guilt. Yeah. And it's not out of making you a better person. It's about keeping you in line and not questioning the authority.
Absolutely. And I think it's, you know, it's being a therapist it's an incredible experience, because on one hand, I try so desperately to be unbiased and non-judgmental, and because I have several clients who, of course, like belong to religious communities, but the majority of my clients are all suffering from some form of religious trauma, and it's so hard to like witness how deeply rooted that pain goes and how significantly it infiltrates every aspect of their life. And then to not have this kind of jaded view of, those types of institutions. I try very hard, and I know for some people it's been great and it's wonderful, but yeah, especially with my clients, my heart just breaks, and I'm just grateful they're doing the work now, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well
I
said.
for sure have heavy religious trauma. And even now, like,
I do too.
I haven't been in the church for years. I practiced shadow work for, well, not as long as I've been out, but I've been practicing shadow work for a long time. So I'm very familiar with my hows and whys. And I will still have these moments where I'm like, why am I like this? And I stop and I go, it's because I was raised Mormon.
Yeah.
That's the
brainwashed
reason.
for too long. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is, again, it's damaging. So,
well, I was told that it takes, I didn't mean to take this whole thing into a religious conversation, but I was told it takes a year to deconstruct for every year you've been in. And I'm like, oh, God.
I can see that. Yeah. Easily.
I hope not. But I'm still working on it. It's just been, that's who I was growing up, and I was in it for a very long time, and it's been really hard. So I love the spreads that you put forward to help me kind of focus on a specific question or a specific topic so that I can focus on that one thing and do my shadow work and see where I need to work on things to start loving myself again. Because, I mean, let's face it, religion really doesn't teach you how to love yourself.
Ooh, yeah,
especially not as a woman.
Ooh,
No.
yeah, another component, right? And I want to go back to something Melissa said about, the year to deconstruct for every year that you were in. I think that we often have this pressure to, especially when we're examining our life, to have a quick outcome, and just like, oh, got it, did some spreads, did some therapy, I'm good to go.
Right.
And of course, we all want to feel better. We all want to grow. I think we all need to be realistic, though, and know that as long as we are alive, we're going to be deconstructing something, because we're still going to have experiences even over the next 10 years that we might think are great now, that in 10 years we are like, oh shit, I probably should think about what that did to me. So I think, yeah, if we think about it, oh no, it's going to take this long to deconstruct, I would just say, that's what life is. Like, we are messy, complicated, layered individuals, and we're always going to be deconstructing something, no matter what phase or level of development we are in life.
And thank you for bringing that to our attention, because so many of us are like, why am I not fixed yet? I've been working on this for so long, but
I should part of life. Better.
Right. Yeah. It's always going to be a continuous thing. And that's why therapy is so important.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I try to tell my clients too, because I think when people think of therapists, it's always funny when someone's new to therapy or someone meets me and they find out I'm a therapist and they're like, oh, you must have your life so together. You must be so perfect and great at communicating and have, the best relationships or whatever. It's like,
you're like, yep.
No. I'm learning and growing along with you, but I do have a lot of tools, and I, understand like how things should function in a healthy way. But yeah, no, we're all trying to figure it out, regardless of who we are or what our profession is. But yeah, it's therapy, I think, obviously, that's what I do, is incredibly important. I think examining our lives is insanely beneficial. It's interesting being a therapist, because I find that it's harder to connect with folks who haven't done any sort of self-reflective work. And I'm not saying they have to be in therapy, but like, even just like, doing like tarot for self-reflection or reading or just being curious about your own experiences, I almost find myself feeling anxious around people who haven't done that because I don't know how to connect with them. I'm like, yeah, it's nice outside. Like, I don't know. You talk about your mother.
Now what? Yeah.
Right. So that's been an interesting part of being a therapist. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it makes life more interesting when you're able to self-reflect and be curious about yourself and others.
I feel like if you've done the work to understand yourself, it also makes you more open and understanding towards other people and maybe why they are the way that they are, you know? And I agree. I have had conversations with people who are just like not interested at all. And I'm like, that's like my entire life. I don't know what to talk to you about.
I'm kidding.
I don't know. I got a dog.
That's always like
weather thing.
If my dog is with me, it's like so much better because I'm like, okay, cool. We can just focus on the dog.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Look how cute the dog is. I was just thinking about what you're saying about the timeline of healing. And I wanted to circle back around to that because it is the concept that healing isn't linear is so important and needs to be repeated so often because I say it till I'm blue in the face and I still get annoyed on my bad days. Like when I wake up and I'm like, yesterday was a great day and today I feel terrible and I hate this. I want this to stop. But
I'm still going through this again.
Yeah.
This is the worst feeling. So for me, when my mental health got really bad, pause. My mental health was already really bad. I just recognized and publicly acknowledged that my mental health was really bad. Yeah. I had to pause my work with clients so that I could focus on healing myself. And I was wondering, as a therapist, Melissa, I know you were curious about this too, but in your work as a therapist, how do you maintain your mental health and manage other people's mental health?
I'm so glad you're asking this. So I have a really interesting kind of maybe long-winded answer to this.
Go for it.
I wish that they prepared me better. That's one thing in grad school. You know, they talk about self-care, but they don't really talk about self-care. You're never truly prepared for what this life will be like. And there have been plenty of times where I have questioned if I could continue doing it because
I'm sure.
You know, I was seeing way too many clients at one point. I hadn't, you know, when you're in private practice or even community mental health, private practice is so much better. Community mental health, you have zero control over how many clients you see. I was working in addictions for a while and I was seeing 34 clients a week and running 3 groups of 10. So I was seeing 64 people a week.
Oh, wow.
And that was right out of grad school.
That's a lot to take on.
This is addiction. So it was even more. It was,
wow.
I was like, oh my God, I made a mistake. I can't do this. So then I switched to, nonprofit work. I was doing in-home work with children and families, which was a little bit more manageable. Then I switched to private practice. And I assumed because I was seeing so many clients before that was normal. I'm supposed to be seeing all these clients. And I got to this point where I was so dissociated all the time. I would do work and then, you know, I'd work from like, 10 to 7 or something like that. And then I would just be like staring off into space and my partner would be like trying to talk to me. And I'm just like, nothing's computing. I can't hold space for you. I can't hold space for my friends. And I realized I was getting burnt out. And I got to this point where I was like, oh, I'm not taking care of myself. And I can't show up for my clients in the way that they deserve for me to show up for them. So it got to a point where, some of the clients that I realized we had done some good work with, and they probably didn't really need to continue seeing me, we discharged or I referred them out, and I kept a smaller caseload. And for the last probably 2 or 3 years, I've significantly reduced my caseload because I think I had reached a point of pretty severe burnout. And now I see a max of maybe 14 clients a week, but I'm also doing the podcast and I have all these other projects I'm working on, but I realized part of my self-care was creativity. So the podcast was this really important creative part of my life that was really healing for me. So, when you think about self-care and how do you take care of yourself when you're taking on all this really intense emotional stuff from clients, it's more than just a bubble bath. It's more than just going for a massage. It's how are you engaging in your interests? How are you tending to your own internal world? What does your internal landscape look like? Because it's so easy to just exist for other people. And that's what I was feeling for the longest time. I kept saying, I just exist for other people. This full circle back to Queen of Cups, reverse Queen of Cups mother.
Yes,
exactly.
I had to do a lot of work around that. Lots of therapy, lots of me trying to fill my time with things that filled me up. So a lot of art, a lot of painting, a lot of podcasting, a lot of just like creative stuff. Tarot was a huge proponent in healing my burnout. Cause when I really picked up tarot regularly again was at the height of my burnout. So I think again, that looks different for everybody. For me, it was creativity. I had no time for that because I was seeing too many people. And I've noticed that the work I'm able to do with my clients now with a smaller caseload and knowing that I have these creative outlets is significantly more powerful than it was when I was seeing too many clients and I didn't have any sort of outlet to take care of myself.
Do you mind if I go way off topic for a
Please.
bit? I want to know how you feel about the existence of consciousness after we die. Because, of course, our podcast is Death Becomes Us. So
I think about this all the time, to be honest.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
I literally was having a conversation with my partner the other day about this. We were just like, and I'm like, we talk about the most wild stuff at like 2 a.m.
I love that.
I have theories, I have wishes, I have desires. I'm one of those people that, I identify as agnostic, so I can neither confirm nor deny what exists beyond what we know or what we've experienced. But I have a lot of fun theorizing, and I like to think that, when we die and we are no longer here, energy, what's the energy can not be destroyed, neither created nor destroyed, or whatever that is. Yep. So it's like, we're still here. We still exist in some form, a different form. And I don't know what that looks
Einstein.
Like. I don't know what that looks like for everybody, but I like to think that I will just be absorbed by the earth and my energy will become a part of the earth or the universe beyond the earth. And I don't really know what that looks like. I just know that that's how I will exist. I'm not quite sure about my consciousness. But yeah, some sort of energetic force will exist. That's my take.
Love that answer.
I do love that.
I love it.
I remember for a long time after I left my religion, and I was like, before I thought I knew exactly what was going to happen to me when I died. And then I left my religion and I'm like, I'm really scared because I have no idea now.
Right.
But now I'm to the point where it's like, hey, it could be literally anything. I'm up for the challenge. Let's see what happens. Like it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it can't be worse than.
Right. I don't think it's going to be worse than human forms.
No. There's no way.
So. It'll be better. It's only up from here.
Exactly.
It only gets better. Yeah. I found it comforting. Not like when I left, we were both raised Mormon. So when I left the church, I was like, great. This feels great. I love not knowing anymore. It was a source of comfort for me. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I love the theories. I love the ideas. I love exploring past lives. I do past life readings, and I can give a damn good past life reading, and I still don't even fully know how it works or if I believe in it. And people ask me, how can you do a past life reading if you don't know? And I say, I don't have that answer for you.
I get it though. Like, cause there's people that you meet and you're just like, I've known you.
Right.
You know,
how does deja vu exist when you haven't?
Right. Like there's just like, you have this experience with them where it's like we've existed together somewhere, or we've crossed paths, or you know my story somehow. And I love those unexplainable experiences. And before, like years ago, 10, 15 years ago, that might have caused me so much anxiety. But because of the ambiguity, because there's like this unknowable aspect to why we feel or experience that. But now it's so exciting to me to think, yeah, it just is. Like, it could be a past life thing. It could be some energetic feeling. It could be something else entirely that we haven't identified.
So many possibilities. Yeah. I love it.
I do love exploring the possibilities. And I do want to know, have you experienced a near-death experience? But B, what do you think about near-death experiences? Do you think that they change you from it? Yeah.
That's what I love the most.
Yeah, I love talking about near-death experiences too. I've had several clients who have had multiple near-death experiences, and they've been kind of the focal point of our work because it changes them. I don't think I've had near-death experience like they have. I've definitely have had some like weird experiences, but I think near-death experiences are fascinating from a neurological standpoint because, the science says, there's the DMT component of the brain and, the near-death experience is like triggering that. And I think that's like the coolest thing because, okay, if this exists, this is like a powerful thing. And also we can create DMT and then have that same experience, not having almost being dead. But again, I don't have a direct answer of, why it is the way it is. I think that it goes to show the magnitude of this universe that we exist in and how those of us who desperately feel like maybe we know or who even deny these things, I think it's out of fear. You're denying because what you don't know scares you. And I think it's so empowering when we get to this point where we can say, oh yeah, here's this thing. This person had a near-death experience and they had this whole conversation or they saw this whole image and now it changed their personality and it changed who they are. And now their life is better for it. Let's just accept that and be like, wow, yeah, like that's an amazing thing that happened. And now that's a huge part of their narrative versus trying to deny it or trying to say it's not true. Because I also think that's not fair to, the people who've had, near-death experiences.
Absolutely. I love how you put that. Is there any questions that you have for Carly and I, or is there anything that you'd like to plug before we sign off?
I think we talked about everything. I love what the two of you are doing. And I think your podcast is really exciting and fun. And I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Thank you.
And I think you're giving a space for folks to be curious, like we were talking about. And yeah, I hope that you continue doing that because I think both of your individual experiences are incredibly important to this field and this community. And yeah, the representation I'm sure is nice.
Thank you. And I love yours as well. It's been very helpful in helping me work through some things of my own.
Oh, okay. Here to chat anytime you need it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
If you loved what you heard today, please consider leaving us a review. Death Becomes Us is an Emotional Pictures production produced by Sarah Nichols and Alex Eisenstein.